The Editor-in-Chief is live in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Okay, welcome to the program. I'm Duncan, Garner, and this is Editor-in-Chief, and we are live this morning. Good to have your company. Great to have your company, actually. 0800 863 293. Give us a call. Let me know what your thoughts are this morning. Is easy access to porn, meaning our teenagers and teenage boys especially, are having trouble working out what consent is? You know, when no means no. Let's teach them this. Ruth Money joins me shortly with some disturbing developments around this area. And do you watch porn, and why? And do you know if your kids do? What do you know about what your kids are up to? And do you talk consent with your children? Answer from me is yes, I do. And, well, it's pretty clear in our place. We're live across social media. We're on Rover, YouTube, live on TikTok, on Twitch as well. Who knew what Twitch was? And we're also on Facebook as well. Leave us a comment. Get involved and have your say. 0800 863 293. It's news time now. Here's MediaWorks Deputy News Editor, Grace Cocker.
Allegations surrounding Te Pāti Māori and census information are being investigated. The party's accused of misusing data during the election. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon has called the Public Service Commission in.
And I just want to reassure the New Zealand public, we've had serious allegations made. I want an independent, as I said, arm's length, objective review undertaken. That's best done through the PSC.
Domestic violence helplines are seeing a rise in family violence. Shine spokesperson Rachel Kane believes the cost of living crisis is a contributing factor at the moment.
If the person using violence feels like they're losing control, whether that's because of financial pressure, then the violence often gets worse and they become really unpredictable.
Repeat rubbish offenders are being given an ultimatum. Auckland Council starting to take recycling bins off people for contamination. General Manager of Waste Solutions, Parul Sood, says there is a lifeline available.
We are more than happy to give the recycling bin back once they understand and they are happy to put recycling right in their bins.
More headaches for Auckland train users as maintenance workers announce industrial action. Unionised employees will refuse to work overtime from today, and there'll be a partial withdrawal of labour. They also won't help with any repairs or breakdowns. AT says this is on top of the action being undertaken by a separate group, which has resulted in reduced services at peak times already. An initial inquest has determined UK TV presenter Dr. Michael Mosley died of natural causes. The 67-year-old's body was found 4 days after he failed to return from a hike. A coroner has ruled out foul play. In sport, South Africa's beaten Bangladesh by 4 runs at the T20 World Cup in New York. Needing 6 runs off 2 balls, Bangladesh came up just short on Sky Sport.
That is a metre away from finishing the game.
And in Rugby League with Machinery House, the Bulldogs are up to 7th on the NRL ladder, beating the Eels 22-18. And that's news in sport.
All right, thanks, Grace. I want my bin back. Says the Auckland girl. Pathetic, isn't it?
Well, no, people are putting things like electronics in and it's causing fires on the rubbish trucks. And then when they go to recycling, all of that has to be moved to the landfill. Like they're finding dirty nappies.
Who's putting that in the recycling bins?
I live in a subdivision at the moment and we've got those big communal waste areas.
Oh,
and
yeah.
definitely there have been people not
lazy.
reading signs at all.
Yeah, people are lazy. Yeah. And we've gone backwards on recycling. We'll do that at some stage, but I think we've gone backwards. I don't recycle like I used to.
I struggle. I sometimes get lazy and I hate that I get lazy.
Naughty girl.
I know.
He's very naughty. Okay, thanks, Grace.
Garner.
Okay, so good morning. Nice to have you company this morning. Welcome. New Zealand, can we stop what we're doing and confront this big issue? Pornography and unrealistic, violent, brutal, forced and non-consensual sex scenes dominate what is being shoved in front of our kids on a daily basis via social media. The internet is the Wild West, and this sort of rape-on-demand stuff normalises what should be regarded as vile and unacceptable in our society. This is a dark world where consent doesn't matter. In the ideal world, of course, we would not have our kids seeing this stuff, but they see it because the world's gone to hell in a handbasket and they've all got devices. And they think it's normal now. And some boys are repeating this in their real lives. Victims advocate Ruth Money has chosen to speak out, saying that she is dealing now with a number of cases every week that centre around abuse via a lack of consent. And she reckons these are entitled kids who start out watching porn and then expect that from young girls. They may be drunk. They may be. It's just absurd. And the girls are abused while they're drunk. And they're too scared to report it. Ruth is with us now. Ruth, it's concerning, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say good morning, but it doesn't feel like a good morning.
No, I'm not going to say that. Right. But it's true, right?
It's absolutely true. And this has come about because every week I am getting cases where I have got teenage men and women, and the ladies don't know that they've been abused often, which is terrifying. They don't know their consent rights. And the young men, and typically this is men or young boys against, or rangatahi, I guess, versus females. And the boys don't really understand that their behaviour is illegal, entitled, and it keeps happening.
So is this effectively, it's what you're talking about, rape?
It's rape. And more than often, they have multiple survivors. It's not just it's happened to a girlfriend or someone who they claim may have been in a relationship. It can happen at parties. You know, I've got cases where I've got 13-year-old girls who have got vomit in their hair. Yes, this is happening, parents. And the boys are in the bedroom assaulting these young girls who can't even move.
Okay, so when how did this happen? Because I've always considered it black and white. You know, parents are pretty clear about things early on, so we got the message and we kind of knew, you know?
Yeah, parents aren't having those conversations. They're busy being busy, and I get, look, hey, we're all busy. I guess the counterfactual to that is you can make time to support your son or your daughter in court and all the money that involved in a defence case, for example. So why don't you put in the time now to avoid, I mean, it will change their life's trajectory.
Oh, it'll change a number of people's lives' trajectory.
So why don't you have the conversation now?
And is it because we're this whole thing about being busy, I'm sorry, prioritise it. No one's too busy. People have a diary the chat in. Yeah. You know? Or do you have no relationship with your kid whatsoever? Because this is a problem too. They're stuck on social media. The kid's in the bedroom.
Pull
the
them
kid
off
doesn't
the
want to go near
screen and
mum or
have
dad.
the conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Turn it off.
Yeah.
How bad are some of these cases?
Absolutely terrible. The problem with the youth justice system, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, is that everything has to be suppressed.
Yeah. So you're muzzled, really, aren't you?
I am a bit muzzled. I can talk in themes, and I can talk about cases with a lack of specific detail. But what I can tell you is that there are some big announcements around some name suppression decisions for one particular youth offender, and I hope that has set a precedent that we will be able to talk about this stuff more freely.
Have we got young boys in front of the courts at the moment for rape?
Yes, every week.
Yeah, and we don't see it all the time, do we? We sometimes see it at the end.
Yes, and we actually only see, a small percentage of that, because when you are a young offender, it doesn't even go into court. There's a whole other side system called the youth justice system, where there is an FGC and we all sit around and we talk about stuff. And I'm a fan of talking about stuff, but unless there's a follow-up and unless there is accountable actions, how does that survivor feel like they've been heard? How does that survivor know that this person's not going to go on and do it again? And I think that's the bit that scares me, and what I was saying yesterday to you is that most of these offenders at the moment have got multiple victims. This is not just a one-off thing.
So they think they have an entitlement then. They have a right to do this. This is what I'm hearing from you, that these are young, the teenage boys.
There is a huge sense of entitlement.
And where's that coming from? Is that coming from what they see on...
Sorry, dads, it's coming from you. And this
they're repeating their behaviour.
Yeah, this is a learned behaviour. Yes, I'm generalising based on my cases, and I am incredibly busy, and I welcome anyone to spend the day with me. Yeah. Because it is a theme where dad won't believe that it's happened. Dad will fund every lawyer that they can possibly get their hands on, and take it all the way up to the Supreme Court, for example, to what I believe he thinks is protecting his son, as opposed to protecting the community from your son and helping your son understand his harmful sexual behaviours.
All it would take is the right behaviours right from the start of when this child is born, that you have the right conversations with them. And you put in place the boundaries and the right chat at home. It's easy.
That's right. It is entitlement often is that behaviour that they model from the house, from the home. And it's all tied in with the family violence statistics. You know, it's not, we can't look at these things in silos, but unfortunately this consent issue, ladies, you need to be aware of your consent laws, and you need to be aware of the rights that you have.
So we're getting a lot of texts and messages in here saying, how do parents address this? How do parents approach it?
So there are good resources online actually for parents to have these conversations. Safeguarding Children has some good tips, there's many. Rape prevention education, help. There are parenting tips to have consent and healthy sexual behaviour conversations. One of the best things you can do is go onto YouTube and Google, or even just Google it actually, but it's on YouTube. It's a cup of tea analogy around consent, and you should force all of your children to watch it so that they can recite it.
Yeah, and it's no means no.
No means no, unless it's an enthusiastic hell yes at every point.
Yes.
Say no. Just because you make me the cup of tea and I change my mind, it's exactly the same thing. Just because I said yes then, and then all of a sudden I don't want to do that anymore, no means no. A push means no. Silence means no.
Yeah.
But we need to teach these people that unless it's an enthusiastic hell yes, it's a no. And no one can consent when they are drunk.
And your message to New Zealand men is to dads, isn't it?
Dads,
sit down with your boys.
Sit down with your boys. I want to hear that they have done that tonight.
I want to hear from the men as well. 0800 863 293. Ruth, we'll keep talking, okay?
Thank you.
We'll keep talking. It's really important.
Garner.
Okay, so 0800 863 293. Duncan, this porn and sex issue isn't old, and if boys are playing up, it's dad's fault, says Tooks here. Well, that's what Ruth has just said as well. It's dad's fault. You've got to tend to agree with that, don't you? I mean, they mirror their behaviour. They model this behaviour. And the porn is everywhere. 8, 9, 10-year-olds are watching this stuff, and it's not just it's not the Playboy under the bed stuff, is it? This is brutal. It's field days, and what's the economy like for farmers as they enter this period of high interest rates? We know interest rates are suffocating retail, but how are farmers faring? And if they're not spending, how is small town rural New Zealand going? Are they coping without the spending? Is field days going off, or is it subdued? We are now joined by Brad Olsen from Infometrics. Brad, g'day mate. Nice to have you on the program.
Good morning.
Are you at field days?
I'm down in Hamilton in the Waikato for it. It starts tomorrow for the next 4 days, I think, from Wednesday morning. So. Yep. Looking forward to getting a bit of an understanding of what's happening out there in the rural economy, because it has been tough, right, in recent times.
Yeah, what have you seen so far? Not so much from being down there, because you're obviously just down there at the start of it, but you read all the data, you see all the data, you collate this and you analyse it. Are high interest rates even higher for farmers, and is that suffocating them, and what's the spend like in the small towns?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the interest rates, absolutely. I mean, farmers are hit with a far, far higher rate. It's a lot more difficult to get lending. You're often on a floating mortgage or farm lending rate. So, yes, you're paying a lot more. That's been a huge hit for farmers over time. It went up for them a lot quicker than most households, so they have been spending a lot more. On one hand, you've had those much higher costs for farmers, which is always difficult. But if that wasn't bad enough, the revenues have come down too. You look at the likes of lamb and mutton prices down at sort of an 8-year low or so. You'll probably remember over Christmas you could get a leg of lamb in the supermarket pretty cheap. That was good for consumers. Challenging though for farmers who weren't making quite as much money. In terms of the spending going through on farm, it is more subdued. People are having to be a lot more careful. You hear stories about how fewer tractors are being registered and similar. So I think that there is a general pullback, and of course that has pretty wide-ranging ramifications for other parts of the economy. If your farmer's not spending on, say, bike maintenance or similar, the bike maintainer's not getting paid. He doesn't need his accountant quite as much, and so on and so forth. So there is a really big ripple effect from the primary sector there.
Yeah, it says to me every time we have this chat, it says to me that interest rates have to ease at some stage, and I think you're pointing out early next year rather than the middle of next year, or maybe the middle of next year. But we really need to see some relief at some stage to get that money flowing again in the economy, because that's the net result, isn't it? When money's tied up with the Reserve Bank, it's tied up. When it's released, and it flows through a circular economy, and people do better. But we need that soon, don't we?
Absolutely, and I mean, I think for the primary sector as well, when you look at sort of some of those spending figures that they would normally be doing, if you're making, effectively a loss on your sheep and beef farm, then yeah, you're cutting it right to the bone in terms of your spend. I think there are some areas that you're seeing some better numbers coming out, the likes of horticulture, kiwi fruit and what have you, apples doing a lot better. The likes of Fonterra has announced a higher starting price for the milk payout next season. It's currently at sort of $7.80 $1.80. It's just above break even for this current season that we're just ending, or that has recently ended. Next season, though, you've got a much better figure starting to come through. Again, that just starts to support a bit more spending. But you're right, until interest rates start to pull back, until people have a little bit more money in their own back pocket rather than paying it on to their mortgage or to the bank, you're going to still see that restrained economy. But even more challenging, we have to continue pushing out how quickly we think those interest rate cuts are going to begin. We've pushed our expectation out now to February next year. But interestingly, in the last week or so, we've seen the European Central Bank and the Canadian Central Bank, both of them have cut their official cash rate equivalents for the first time. So it's starting, it's just going to be a slow ride.
Yeah, see, that's interesting that internationally you're starting to see that easing, and it will be slow as, these governments and these reserve banks are tentative about things because they don't want to let the inflation animal out again. But I agree with you. I can't see it happening before Christmas because of that concern that the dead cat could bounce again.
Absolutely. And I think that's the Reserve Bank's problem, right, is they're looking at these things and they're pretty worried. I mean, they've had one job to do over the last couple of years and they've failed miserably at it. If any of us were in that position and being told, you've got one KPI and you're so far away from it for such a long time, you would move heaven and earth to do it, and you'd be real sketchy about moving it too quickly. So I think that's exactly the position they find themselves in. The risk, of course, particularly doing it just before Christmas, is that they don't meet for quite a few months. They sort of do it normally late November. They don't often come back till February. So the risk is if they did it in November and something went wrong, they might not pick it up for a couple months, and by that point it might be too late. Yeah,
and you'll be able to tell, won't you, today as you walk around Fieldays how buoyant it is, because tomorrow, when I think it starts tomorrow when you get there. But you'll get a feeling, won't you? You'll hear from the people, you'll hear from the farmers, you'll hear from the industry, you'll hear from you see some stats, and you'll think, yeah, it's either good or it's bad. You get a real sense of it just walking around, won't you?
Oh, totally. And I feel like, everyone in the primary sector is pretty happy to give you their pretty blunt and honest opinion. There's not a lot of couching those conversations. I think as well, though, go back 6 months and I think everyone was actually probably more in the doldrums. There seems to be a bit of a feeling on the ground, just in the conversations I've had driving around the last couple of days, that, look, things are challenging. There might be some greener shoots next year. That's encouraging. But also you're seeing some of those other pressures that at least aren't getting worse. The likes of on-farm costs, for example, they're still high. Gosh, they're 25% up on a couple of years ago, but they've been flat the last 6 months. So a little bit of a change there in terms of not getting worse. That seems to say that we're on that cusp or that tipping point of better things. It might just, as we've said, take a bit longer to get there.
I just don't know how some of these retail outlets are doing it, though. Even in the small towns, sort of the service towns like Stratford and places like that, and Taranaki, Hawera. Some of these retail outlets that have the fixed overhead costs, how on earth, and these places seem so damn quiet. I mean, Auckland's quiet. And these retail shops, how are they going to survive?
Oh, it is going to be challenging, although it has been fascinating the last couple of weeks. You've seen some reporting out from some of the bigger retailers who have stores, around the country, and how some are not obviously doing not very well, but others who seem to be doing all right. I mean, the sales figures, for example, out of the warehouse prompted the loss of their chief executive, so things were bad, but also seemingly more challenging for them again. But then you hear from the likes of Briscoe's and that who are doing all right. JB Hi-Fi is actually selling more and more over time. So it does seem to be that it's not quite as consistent across the economy. It's a bit more of a mixed bag. There are some areas doing well, but you're right, you are seeing that hit particularly coming through in some of those regional areas. Even if the dollar spend looks all right, even if there's more money being spent, there's less items being taken out of store. That inflation is high, and of course the costs for those retailers themselves have gone up. They're having to pay more for staff who are selling fewer and fewer goods every day. That means that again your costs are going up, your sales are going down. You're just not making nearly as much as you were before.
Yeah. Brad, always putting the plain common sense into economics. I always appreciate your time on the program, mate. All the best.
Thank you.
Okay.
Duncan Garner.
Right, 0800 863 293. Forrester, I'll bring you in here. Forrester, hello. Earth
G'day.
to Forrester, mate. How are things? What are they saying on, what are we on, TikTok?
Yes,
Yeah.
People asking, if Fonterra can get bailed out by the government, do they have to pay it back? The Reserve Bank and banks are doubling their money versus last year at the expense of everyday people.
Yeah. The thing for me is that the banks will walk away in the next 12 months with, combined, the big banks will walk away with $10 billion worth of profits.
Yep.
So at a time when we're all getting screwed, the margin that the Aussie banks take is more than the margin they take over Australian consumers. So they take just a little bit more out of us. I find that stinks, don't you think?
Yeah, someone says true banks are always making money. I think that is true.
Troy has said to me, Forrester, you may want to give me some advice here. Troy said, Duncan, retail is tough. Go to Peaches and Cream and support local adult stores. Now, where did this come from, Troy?
Perhaps the pornography chat. I don't know.
Have I told you about my visit to Peaches and Cream?
No, you should tell that story.
I just went there to pick up a gift for a 50th birthday for a woman I know. Yeah.
Right. What did you buy?
Well, Forrester, if you're really that interested, it was an expanding penis.
All right.
Which you put it in your pocket, and if it got warmer or it was fondled, it just continued to grow. And by the time I got to the RSA for the party, the thing was coming out my pocket.
Can we move on?
I'm just telling you. You asked. I didn't want to say,
ask,
but
this is
being
up
upfront
here,
about
and
it.
I want to move on now. Cheers.
Yeah. Why are you so drab about things?
Oh,
I was asked the question.
It's 7:50, and we don't need to be talking about
No,
expanding.
I accept that, but I'm getting some feedback here.
appendages.
Good question, Forrester. That's the feedback there. If you make boys, well, you're responsible for boys. That's the best thing I've heard this morning. If you make boys, then you're responsible for them. I'm a father, says Tooks, and I'm blaming fathers. Man up, boys. Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, 0800 863 293.
Garner.
Okay, also today,
3 questions
And-
from the Editor-in-Chief. 1.
at number 1, do these apps that monitor your kids' devices actually work okay? Answer is yes. I was in the garage the other night chatting to the father of one of my son's mates when his phone beeped and told him his son was on the internet searching for something that perhaps he shouldn't be. Firstly, let me be clear, he wasn't on a porn site, but he was searching for muscle-building powder creatine, which bulks you up fast. Now, this young fella's 42 kgs, dripping wet, so when he jumped in the car an hour later with me, I said to him, looking at creatine to bulk up, eh? He was gobsmacked that I had intel on him, and he sat there going, wait, what? How did you know that? That's freaky. I'd hate being eavesdropped on, but email if you want the app, because it's quite smart, isn't it?
2.
At number 2, how wrong is this guy, and can he be saved from his delusional state? Dean Kimpton is head of Auckland Transport and is responsible for how we navigate the city, where we park and drive, and the buses and the trains. All of it, basically. And he reckons that AT, Auckland Transport, gets it right 99.9% of the time. And he couldn't stop smiling when he wired on about his success. Firstly, sack him. Secondly, sack him again. Because when you're so arrogant and so perfect in your own mind, then you don't see any issues to fix that need fixing. We are royally rooted if he carries on like this. And he's also bemoaning about the lack of good news stories, like the bus getting someone to work on time. That's not news. That's doing your job. Besides, when did that happen? The last time that happened? Who knows?
3.
And at number 3, how unlucky is this woman? An Indonesian mother of 4 who went missing in the jungle was found fully clothed inside the belly of a 6-metre reticulated python. 45-year-old Farida was walking through the jungle to sell food at a local market in Sulawesi when she went missing. This has been reported by AFP. Her husband, Noni, went looking for his wife and found her belongings before spotting the huge snake with a distended belly. He ran for help, and the locals then caught the python, sliced it open, discovering Frida inside. Sadly, the python had suffocated her and then swallowed her whole. She's the 6th person to die in this manner in Indonesia since 2017. Now, I'm not sure how to end this. I think I've probably said enough on that story, don't you think?
Duncan Garner.
Yeah, right. So I want to talk about a follow-up to the first interview we had this morning. How did we talk to our lads about consent? Most of us think our little angels would never hurt anybody, but you are delusional if you think that's the case. We're living in a dream world. Jo Robertson is a researcher who has studied the effect of porn on the young male mind. She also talks to schools about how they can educate young men and women on consent, and she joins us now. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here.
This is such a big area, and I've talked to you before about this, and we'll continue to talk about this because, until it's solved, if it's ever solved. What are you seeing with consent?
Yeah, I mean, Ruth perfectly nailed that. We've got a really complex issue with boys who don't know how to read when consent is or isn't present, and sometimes completely violating when it isn't present. But then we've also got, unfortunately, girls who are now, because of what they've seen online, more likely to accept aggression. And when I say accept, not that they like it, but they think that that's okay.
They think it's normalised.
Yeah, so they think that if someone pushes their boundaries, is a little bit threatening, kind of ignores a no, that's just really normal. And, for example, a low bar is, I've worked in lots of schools, and
Yes.
I asked a group of girls once, what would be good sex? And they said, if it didn't hurt,
Wow.
So really low bar around what to expect.
That's what it's come to, is it?
Yeah. And I mean, but following up on what you've said a lot, which is parents, engaging in this conversation, I equally talked to a focus group of kind of 16 to 18-year-olds at a local Auckland high school, really diverse group. And I said, do you want to be talking about sex and porn more often? And all of them said yes. And then I said, who would you like to do that with? And every single one of them said a family member. I want to highlight that they didn't necessarily say parent, but they said a family member. So somebody in their environment.
Yeah, maybe an older brother or an older sister or something.
Yeah, it could be
helpful.
Anyone's. So, some people don't have dads.
No. And do you think where you see no father, is that showing disturbing developments as well?
We know that an absence of a parent, so a lack of attachment, is going to create some long-term issues. If they have one primary caregiver who is phenomenal, however, they can overcome that.
Just reading the Chief Census reports over the years, I think it was 2018, the Chief Census said that the kids seeing this porn online, they don't necessarily want to see it.
No.
They're not that interested in it, but it comes their way anyway. So it's a bit like, they look at it as it comes past. So they're not looking for it, but it comes their way and they don't like it.
Yeah,
they've overwhelmingly said they don't like it.
Yeah, and by far the majority of young people want measures in place to protect them online.
But what's the chances of that? I mean, this is the Wild West.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I've been pushing for structural kind of regulation changes for nearly a decade.
I remember
have seen little to no change.
Why is it so hard to move these big beasts? I mean, social media, they're huge companies, we know that. But what about regulation? Why are they sort of deaf ears, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, this is a battle between adult freedoms and child protection. And every time it's come to a head, adults have won that fight. And, this is the case of lots of adults not wanting their porn or other things that they're engaging with not to be taken away.
Yeah. I mean, I think if people don't know much about porn, it's alarming how much porn there is in our society, right? There's decades and decades of it. If you sat down and watched it all today, there's decades of this stuff.
169 years on
Has
one
it got
site.
169?
Yeah, one site.
I thought it was 87 years.
No, 2021. So that's obviously still 3 years ago.
169.
Yeah.
So if I sat down and watched all the porn available on this one site today,
yes.
I'm 50 now, so another 169 years, I'll be 200 and something years old.
Yeah. That's the site themselves saying that, so that's not an external
I don't think I'd make it.
Researcher.
I don't think I'd make it for some reason. What do you reckon? I'd keel over.
I don't think I want to.
No, well, of course not. That's the thing, but that shows how much there is. Who's making this stuff? Where's it coming from?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people at home. So that's a big shift as well. There's a lot of people at home making content. We saw a huge explosion of that during COVID.
Is it made here in New Zealand?
Oh, everywhere. Yeah, everywhere. When you've got really, really graphic, illegal content, that's more likely to be made overseas. But yeah, I want to pull this right back though. This is not just a conversation about porn. These conversations really need to happen from the age of, the preschoolers. When you're talking about consent and you're talking about touch and bodies and all that good stuff, you need to be cultivating the culture in your home really early.
So do you favour this being discussed by teachers in schools? I
favour it being discussed by anybody who'll jump in.
Yeah. But
so
there's this whole push around some of the very conservative churches and things say, no, we shouldn't be talking about this. Do not address, don't put it in the curriculum and things like that.
Yeah. The irony of that is that they think that all these teachers are talking to their kids about sex and saying all these crazy things, but hardly anyone actually is. So
I know, they're trying to make it, they're forcing kids to be transgender.
No. They're definitely not. No. And by and large, it's really hard for teachers actually to talk about this because they're not trained. They lack confidence. They're really scared of, hurting parents and hurting kids as well.
And thinking that's a parent's zone, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of tension.
When should you first talk to your kids about sex?
8.
You say that without any hesitation. Why 8?
Because we've got girls who are likely to start entering puberty soon, and they're also
at 8.
Yeah. So they often will start at around age 9, and I don't think it's right to set our girls up for failure, which is feeling scared, confused, unsure about what their body is doing.
It's young, isn't it?
Yeah, but the average age someone sees porn will be 12. So then you've got, nearly half of our child population seeing it before then, and we want to be what I call the anchoring bias, which is where they see the world through the lens of what you have shared with them.
Yeah, that's at 12, and that's boys and girls. It's not just boys that are watching this stuff. They might seek it out more than girls, but it'll come across the girl's desk.
Yes, definitely. Girls is usually a little bit later, but that's the average. So 12 is the average across everyone.
So what's the good news in all this? Is this anything positive?
Yeah, you can have really, really great conversations with your kids. Like, classic example, I knew a 10-year-old who came across a whole lot of really, really explicit, problematic content, and her parent reached out to me straight away at midnight.
At midnight? And you got a 24/7 answer?
Yeah. And then anyway, they reached out and said, what do I do? And I said, you just need to dive right in. You know, you need to talk about everything. You need to answer every question. This is not a time to hold back. And they now have a really great relationship. And they're going into teenage years having talked about it all.
Do you get any funding from any sources to help you with your push here? Are you?
No.
This is ridiculous. You should be on. You should be live on television in the evening, in town hall meetings, talking about this stuff. You should be. We've got so much junk on around. You know, this is the stuff that matters. Yeah. This is about respecting the opposite sex in our society. Yeah. This is about knowing what no is, and this is about learning to be a decent citizen.
Yeah. So I'm going to do a small plug here. Yeah. I have a parenting course.
Yeah. Okay, go for it.
Yeah. So
how do people get hold of you?
So, I mean, I'm in lots of different places, social media, under Sex Therapist Joe. So I'm a sex therapist. What that means is I work with couples. And then I figured, oh my goodness, I'm just hearing about all these parents with all these kids happening to them. And then I also used to work with kids around trauma. So I developed this course called Tricky Chats Parenting, and it's online. You can do it anytime. I really push towards dads, getting engaged. I found that dads didn't want to come to talks. They didn't want to sit in a room with a whole lot of other men and talk about sex, porn, and consent.
But haven't we? Yeah. Okay. So my father might have been like that.
No,
from
still,
his generation.
We've got a really significant still.
We've
Yeah,
got a more modern young men, aren't we?
They'll sit at home and they'll watch a video. So this is the difference, and why I created the course was, okay, let's stop expecting people to turn up into a hall. This is another thing that I think you'll be interested in. If I do a talk in a primary school, there'll be 100 parents. If I do a talk in a high school, there'll be like 20.
Yeah, why's that?
Because they take their hands off the wheel.
Yeah, it's someone else's problem then.
Well, they just go, oh, the horse is bolted, I can't engage, my kids don't want to talk to me anymore.
I'm the opposite. I'm more hands-on in that high school, knowing that it's co-ed school, and I'm in there.
Yeah.
I'm keeping an eye on things.
Yeah, which is great, but lots of people don't do that. They both start working, really, really long hours, and I am for parents, so I am here to support you.
So men will turn up if they have alcoholism. They'll turn up and sit around the table and say, "G'day, I'm Duncan, I'm alcoholic."
Yeah, it's hard to do that, but they will. Yeah.
Or if they'll go to Narcotics Anonymous or whatever it is, and they say, "G'day, I'm Duncan, and I can't stop smoking weed," or whatever. But when it comes to their children and sex and consent.
Yeah.
What, men can't show up and say, yeah, g'day, I'm Duncan, I'm worried about where these boys are heading.
Yeah, they feel uncomfortable.
Really?
Yeah,
That's a throwback to their fathers too.
Yes, so they've never, ever been taught how to do that. So it takes one generation to break that pattern. One. And what we need now is a whole bunch of dads, I would say, and mums, to go, I'm going to break that pattern and I'm going to start talking.
But where are the males? Like, you're brilliant, you do brilliant work, well done, you're amazing. But where are the males sitting in here and sitting out in society, outwardly looking and being role models and being public figures on this stuff, being ambassadors?
Not a lot.
We have Dry July and Movembers and all these things, but...
Yeah, not a lot. It's really devastating. If you go to a sexual harm conference, it'll be filled with women.
Of course it will be.
Yeah, and we want them in the room, but there's not a lot of men in that room.
No, it's like Men's Health Week. We've got all these great ambassadors on all week.
Yeah. But they're not turning up to the other issues where they're actually
Why
most
are we
likely
shy?
to perpetrate
What's wrong with us? Because we're not doing the right things at home? Because we're actually guilty?
It's deeply uncomfortable, and I don't think we can underestimate the power of discomfort. Feeling awkward, not wanting to say the wrong thing, not wanting to do more harm. I truly think it's, for men now, it's quite challenging. They don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, but and so we have to allow men to say the wrong thing.
Yeah, I do. I think they have to be able to make mistakes.
It's a bit like the Māori language. If you sort of bash people over the head with it and then they get it wrong and you tell them off, people turn away. So
we have to take them on a journey.
Yeah, so if they say something awkward, they don't want to be humiliated. And I know this. You sit in the room, oh, he said that. What a dickhead. We can't do that.
Well, we have to go, hey, that was a bit of a problem, but here's how to do it a little bit better. Thank you so much for being in the conversation.
Are men making progress?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I've got 3 sons.
So those 3 are, my one is. Yeah.
So, I'm really, really passionate about boys and men, and I think that we can support them better.
Men listening to this, if they could take away one takeaway from our chat, what would you want it to be?
To listen to my course.
Yeah. Jump online and have a listen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Thanks so much. We'll just one day we'll take some calls and people can ring you.
I'd love that.
Yeah, we'll do that. Nice to see you, Joe. Appreciate your time.
Garner.
Okay, good morning, folks. 0800 863 293. Here's your problem, Duncan says, Tooks. Piss, pot, porn and pokies. Things we participate in that are hard to talk about because, gossip and that sort of thing. Piss, pot, porn and pokies. Things we participate in. Forrester, I've never heard that before. Piss, pot, porn and pokies, although I know all about them.
We certainly should be talking more about them with our young man, I think.
Yeah. James says to me, Duncan, I learnt from my dad how not to treat people because the last thing I want to be is like him. I know what your attitude is there, James. You got to hang on in there, mate, with your dad. You still got him, right? So, you probably have to respect him, although maybe you don't. Doesn't sound like you do. But you live your life, James. You live your life. Duncan, China hasn't got this problem. They'll probably cut it off if they disrespect people there. Women must not tolerate their men's bad behaviour. If they do, they're perpetuating the problem. We have to support women to be able to do this, says Tim. Yep, that's true. Anything else, Forrester?
Well, your YouTube comments are good, but I think some people in your TikTok comments this morning have absolutely and totally missed the mark.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, people saying, how about girls that can be blackmailing, persuasive, and manipulating to boys and need to be taught this? That's not the topic, mate.
That's not the...
You've just totally missed the mark of this entire discussion.
That may well be the problem,
Exactly.
When did you first come across porn, Forrester? How old are you now?
Oh, I can't remember. I'm 21.
Okay, so do you remember as a teenager this thing coming in your face?
At some point. I mean, it's shared around at school, right? I went to an all-boys school. It's commonplace there,
Yeah.
Get shared around.
It's all shared around, yeah. Okay, we might leave it there for us. So did you hear what I just said? That was very much a mistake, what I just said, but anyway. Good to have your company.
Duncan Garner.
Yeah, all right, so...
It's the slam dunk.
It certainly is. I want to talk about porn, about this consent issue and about being good parents. The internet is not a parent. It will teach our kids all the wrong things about porn, won't it? We must step up, and we've just heard this morning about men stepping up. And to our fathers out there, we've got to talk to our boys. I'm not lecturing you about this. I've got to do this too. I'm the same as you. We're in the same corner. Got to talk about consent and no meaning no, and treating women with respect. Copying porn scenes online is not how people live their lives. So keep telling them that. We've got to confront them and talk about it. Don't be embarrassed. Now, according to the chief censor, Mr. Shanks, 1 in 4 young people in New Zealand first saw porn by the age of 12. 3 out of 4 have seen it by 17, and that figure now may well be out of date. Most young people were not seeking out pornography when they first saw it. So they weren't searching for it, but it came their way. It found them. What else in society finds young kids like pornography? How did it become like this? It's thought up to 20% of teenagers view porn either monthly, weekly or daily. 20%. Boys and girls view porn. Boys seek it out earlier. What do young people see in porn? Now, the chief censor says what young people told him is sobering. Romance or affection is absent. It's common for them to have seen violence, aggression and non-consensual activity in porn. This was a 2019 report by Mr. Shanks, David Shanks, who was the previous chief censor. They frequently see a man controlling and dominating another person. Portrayals of gender roles are particularly concerning. Young people were much more likely to see a focus on men's pleasure and dominance, while also more likely to see women being demeaned or subjected to violence or aggression and non-consensual behaviour. How sickening. Most young people have never talked about it with a parent or caregiver, and we learned that again this morning. Most young people in New Zealand have seen pornography. Porn isn't just an issue for teens, it's an issue for kids. So we're going to step up and step into the conversation with our kids. It's so bloody crucial to get right. Blokes, and I'm talking to you here, we've got to talk to our boys and rinse and repeat so we don't produce misogynistic meatheads and set them loose into the real world. This is our job as dads. It's one of our main jobs. Talk consent. Tell them that porn is not how people live their lives. That's not normal. The internet won't get this right and has no intention of turning anything off, okay? So we've all got skin in the game. I've also got 2 daughters, okay? And how they are treated is the ultimate end game in all this, I suppose. But the size of the task is gigantic. But if we all do our bit, then society surely will get that just a little bit better.
Duncan Garner, live.
Caleb, someone talk to you about this? I mean, you're a 26, 27-year-old man, right?
26, yep.
Yeah, 26.
Yep.
You've aged well.
Oh, thanks, mate. About porn.
Yeah, anyone sit down and talk to you about how to treat women? Or do you just know?
Well, I was just saying to Miranda, right from a young age, like I was talked to by my parents. I'm an only child as well, so I've got a sort of more of a friendship relationship with my parents than a sort of parenting relationship.
Well,
but
that's a good point, actually. Should you be friends with the kids, or should you parent? Should you have boundaries, Miranda? This is the thing we talked about.
But it was still very, there was still boundaries. But I think the good thing for me was that my parents were always very upfront, very open about this stuff.
It's good, isn't it? Is that good?
And talked to me about it from a very young age.
You remember?
I
young?
remember talking to I would have been 9 or 10.
Really?
Yeah. And my parents would talk to me about this sort of stuff, and they'd ease you into it as well. They'd start with a book about where babies come from and this and that. And so you
get the old birds and the bees.
Yeah. And so I didn't fully grasp the concept of what sex was and that sort of stuff until I was, obviously you're older and you experience sort of whatever you experience. You see pornography for the first time or whatever. But it was always a very open chat. It was always very open between my parents and myself about when I was in my first relationship and you're taking next steps and that sort of, they don't know the full details about things, but you
they don't need to know everything.
No, but in the sort of context of it was about keeping both myself and my first partner or whoever safe.
So you'll be a good dad. You'll be a good dad because you've got boundaries. So see, this is why it's crucial to. That's why it's crucial to break some new ground and stop the misogyny, whatever, in a certain family. And once you break that in, it's fixed for life, because hopefully you can pass those comments on right through different generations. But you got to break cycle.
I think the thing that was frustrating for me after having Ruth and Joe in is that I'm just so disappointed that these conversations aren't happening. Yeah. And I don't know, I was none the wiser. I thought genuinely that these things were being done in the home. And
no, not at all. It's
pretty shit out there.
It is really bad. But with good men like you around, we'll have a better future, hopefully. There we go, mate. This is from Bradock's morning team. Loving this live broadcast. Looking forward to many great mornings. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And I do like the piss pot, porn and pokies line. There's things we participate in that we don't want to talk about. Also, a bit of feedback that's come in. Also, this was on the social media stuff that we've done the last few days about the dickheads on social media. Thank God someone's addressed it, says Utaratoa. The bravery behind social media attacks is unreal. Everyone gets very comfortable behind the keyboard sharing their opinions. Pumpkins and flowers, says to me this. You love this. Pumpkins and flowers. Which, does a pumpkin have a flower in it? And can a pumpkin go flower? It can, eh? I'm sure it can anyway. Yeah, it can. It's important stuff. Pumpkins and flowers. We live in a society where majority don't care about bad stuff unless it directly is happening to them. It's why we have the current government in power. Most people are only looking out for themselves, not as a collective. I'd rather everyone be in a good place, not just me. And Rachie Pants says to me, to be honest, actual trolls do not care. There are groups set up to encourage their behaviour. Other trolls use it as a way of venting on complete strangers, but surely that can't feel good. If you're a prick online, you're a prick in life, in my view. And Euron Zanes says, just because someone thinks differently from you doesn't give you the right to bully or be mean. Be better, New Zealand. Yeah, it's a good way to go out, I reckon. That's us. Thank you for joining us today. This will be available as a podcast almost immediately, as Caleb does his fancy quick work on the keyboard, and you can grab it on Rover, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. Thank you all for your feedback and support. I'm Duncan at rover.nz. Don't be afraid to send me an email as well. Tell us what you think. To my team, Kaylo, Miranda, Forrester and Zarina, thank you guys. We'll do this all again tomorrow, and thanks for the effort today. Sort of kind of seamless. We had a few issues yesterday, and I want to apologise for those if they affected you. But today, she's been all smooth sailing. This is no rehearsal. Life is no curtain raiser. This is the one you live in. It's the only one we live in. And we also live in one of the best countries on earth. So get out there and enjoy it and have a great day. Take care, New Zealand.
That was Duncan Garner, Editor-in-Chief Live. Missed something on the live stream? Text Duncan to 3598 to listen back on the podcast. Want to get in touch? Call 0800 863 293.